Imagine this. In the misty shadows of a Gothic estate on the outskirts of Kraków, 1935, legendary detective Hercule Poirot arrives for a mysterious gathering hosted by the enigmatic Baroness Elena Kowalski. Amid elegant guests harboring dark secrets, a debt-ridden artist nephew, his jealous ballerina wife, a secretive physician, a Russian countess with wartime ties, and a loyal steward with hidden bloodlines. A scream shatters the night. The Baroness lies poisoned in her study, chalice in hand, a forged suicide note nearby. As alibis crumble like ancient ruins, Poirot's little gray cells unravel a web of forbidden affairs, smuggled treasures, and a long-buried illegitimate child seeking revenge. Twists of betrayal lead to a chilling revelation. The steward, her secret son, orchestrated the murder for inheritance and justice denied. But in true Agatha Christie style, no one is truly innocent until the final, shocking confession. Dive into this Poirot mystery, where shadows hide killers and truth emerges in the snow. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Shadowed Halls. The rhythmic clatter of the Orient Express wheels against the rails provided a soothing backdrop to Hercule Poirot's reflections as he sat in his first-class compartment, gazing out at the passing landscape of Eastern Europe. It was the autumn of 1935, and the air carried a chill that spoke of impending winter, much like the subtle undercurrents in the letter that had drawn him from his comfortable London flat. The missive, penned on heavy cream paper embossed with the Kowalski crest, had arrived just a week prior. "Mon cher Monsieur Poirot," it began in elegant French, "your unparalleled skill in piercing the veils of mystery is known even in the distant halls of Kraków. I beseech you to grace our estate with your presence for a small gathering. Fortunes and fates intertwine here, and I sense shadows where there should be only light. Your discretion would be invaluable." Signed by Baroness Elena Kowalski, widow of the late Baron Thaddeus, whose industrial empire had spanned coal mines and steelworks before. The Great War reshaped the continent. Poirot twirled the end of his waxed mustache, his small, neat hands folded over the letter, now tucked in his breast pocket. "Ah, the Baroness," he murmured to himself. "She writes not merely to invite, but to implore. What shadows lurk in this Polish manner? The little gray cells, they tingle with anticipation." He had accepted, of course. Such enigmas were the lifeblood of his retirement, which was anything but retired. The train pulled into Krakow's grand station with a hiss of steam, and Poirot alighted, his patent leather shoes gleaming under the platform lights. A chauffeur in a peaked cap awaited him, holding a sign with his name. "Monsieur Poirot? The Baroness sends her regards. The car is this way." The drive through the city was a tapestry of history, medieval spires of Wawel Castle silhouetted against the twilight sky. The bustling Rhinek Główny with its cloth hall and horse-drawn carriages, giving way to quieter suburbs, where mist rose from the Vistula River like ghostly fingers. The shadowed estate loomed at the end of a winding lane lined with ancient oaks, their branches forming a natural archway. The manor itself was a relic of Gothic splendor, its stone facade etched with ivy, tall windows glowing faintly from within, and turrets that seemed to pierce the gathering dusk. Poirot noted the name's aptness. Shadows indeed played across the grounds, cast by the encroaching forest that bordered the property. At the massive oak doors, flanked by iron lanterns, the Baroness herself emerged to greet him. She was a woman of commanding presence, perhaps 55, with high cheekbones inherited from Slavic nobility, her dark hair pulled into a severe chignon streaked with silver threads. Her gown of deep burgundy silk whispered as she extended a gloved hand. "Monsieur Poirot, how gracious of you to come on such short notice. Your journey was not too taxing, I hope." "Pas du tout, Madame la Baronne," Poirot replied with a bow, his cat-like eyes appraising her. "The Orient Express, it is a marvel of efficiency, and your estate, c'est magnifique, though perhaps a trifle melancholique." She smiled faintly, a shadow crossing her features. "The melancholy is part of its charm, or so they say. Come, the others await in the drawing-room. We are a small party, but lively enough." She led him through a vaulted hallway adorned with tapestries depicting medieval hunts, the air scented with beeswax from polished wood and faint traces of lavender. The drawing-room was a cavern of warmth, dominated by a roaring fireplace beneath a portrait of the late Baron, stern in military uniform. Crystal decanters sparkled on a sideboard, and heavy velvet curtains muffled the wind outside. The guests rose as they entered, and the Baroness made introductions with practiced grace. First, her nephew, Victor Kowalski, a tall young man in his 30s with tousled blonde hair and the dissipated air of an artist who had seen better days. His velvet jacket bore paint stains, and his handshake was firm but distracted. "Uncle's favorite detective," he said with a wry grin. "Aunt Elena swears by your exploits. Welcome to our humble abode." Beside him stood his wife, Irina, a lithe woman with the poise of a former ballerina, her auburn hair coiled in an elaborate updo. Her eyes, sharp and emerald, flicked over Poirot appraisingly. "Charmed, monsieur. Victor has told me of your unique methods. One hopes they won't be needed here." Then came Dr. Stefan Nowak, the family physician, a bespectacled man of middle age with a precise beard and the calm demeanor of one accustomed to crises. "An honor, Monsieur Poirot. I've followed your cases in the papers. Quite the scientific mind." Countess Olga Petrova, a Russian émigré and the Baroness's closest confidant, exuded old-world glamour in a gown of emerald silk that matched her jewelry. Her face, lined with the exile's sorrows, lit up with a warm smile. "From one wanderer to another, welcome. Kraków is far from Brussels, but perhaps not so different in its intrigues." Finally, the estate's steward, Janek Lis, a broad-shouldered Pole with a military haircut and impassive expression, bowed stiffly. "Sir, if you need anything, I am at your service." Poirot settled into a plush armchair, accepting a glass of sherry as the group resumed their seats. Conversation flowed like the river outside, light at first, touching on the latest exhibitions in Paris, the rising tensions in Europe, and the Baroness's recent acquisition of a rare Fabergé egg. But beneath the politeness, Poirot detected strains. Victor's casual mention of artistic pursuits requiring funds met with a sharp glance from Irina. Dr. Nowak's inquiry about the Baroness's health answered evasively. Countess Olga's nostalgic sigh over lost fortunes in St. Petersburg, and Janek's silent vigilance from the doorway, as if guarding against unseen threats. Dinner was announced by a solemn butler, and they adjourned to the dining hall, a room of gleaming mahogany and silver candelabra. The meal was exquisite, borscht infused with exotic spices, roasted quail, and pierogi stuffed with wild mushrooms, paired with wines from the estate's cellar. Talk turned to inheritances, subtly at first. "The old ways are fading," the Baroness said, raising her chalice in a toast. "To new beginnings, free from shadows." Glasses clinked, but Poirot noted the fleeting expressions. Victor's greed, Irina's resentment, Nowak's caution, Olga's melancholy, Lisa's stoicism. As the clock in the hall chimed midnight, the party began to disperse. Poirot lingered over his coffee, his mind cataloguing impressions. Then a piercing scream shattered the night, echoing from the direction of the study. The guests froze, then rushed toward the sound. The Baroness's private sanctum, its door ajar, revealed a harrowing scene. Elena Kowalski slumped over her desk, her face contorted in agony, an ornate chalice overturned beside her hand, its contents spilling like dark blood onto the blotter. The air held the faint, acrid scent of something unnatural. Poirot knelt swiftly, his handkerchief pressed to his nose. "Mon Dieu," he whispered. "Poison. The shadows have claimed their victim." Chapter 2. The Poisoned Chalice. The echo of the scream still hung in the air like a malevolent spirit as the guests converged on the study door. Hercule Poirot, ever the man of method, was the first to push it fully open, his small frame belying the authority in his stride. The room was a sanctum of scholarly elegance, walls lined with leather-bound volumes, a massive oak desk dominating the center, and a single lamp casting elongated shadows across the Persian carpet. But all eyes were drawn to the Baroness Elena Kowalski, her body crumpled forward over the desk, one arm extended as if in a final plea. The chalice, an antique goblet of silver filigree, lay tipped on its side, a residue of crimson liquid pooling onto the green leather blotter. The acrid tang of bitter almonds assaulted the nostrils. Cyanide, Poirot corrected himself inwardly. Not arsenic, as he had first surmised in the heat of the moment. No, this was subtler, swifter. "Madam," exclaimed Countess Olga Petrovna, her hand flying to her throat, the emeralds at her neck catching the light like accusatory eyes. She swayed, and Dr. Stefan Nowak stepped forward to steady her, his physician's instincts overriding the shock. "She's gone," he murmured after a brief examination, feeling for a pulse that was not there. Poison, without doubt. The convulsions. The froth at the lips. Victor Kowalski, pale as a ghost, muttered an oath under his breath and turned away, while his wife, Irina, hovered at the threshold, her ballerina's grace frozen into rigidity. Yannick Lys, the steward, entered last, his military poise unbroken as he scanned the room with a soldier's eye for detail. "I heard the cry from the hall," he said flatly. "Shall I summon the authorities?" "Oui, immediately," Poirot commanded, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a scalpel. "And touch nothing, mes amis. This is no accident of fate." He circled the desk carefully, his patent leather shoes avoiding the spill. The window was latched from within, the heavy curtains undisturbed. The door had been ajar, but no sign of forced entry. On the desk, beside the chalice, lay a sheet of notepaper, inscribed in a flowing hand. "Forgive me, for the shadows have overtaken the light. Elena." The ink glistened faintly, still wet. Irina gasped. "Suicide? But why? She was so vibrant at dinner." "Appearances, madame, they deceive," Poirot replied, his egg-shaped head tilting as he produced a magnifying glass from his pocket. He examined the note without touching it, then the chalice. "Observe, the grip on the goblet is loose, as if released in death throes, yet the fingers are positioned oddly, almost arranged. And the note? The pen lies there, on the floor, uncapped but dry. How does one write with a dry nib?" Dr. Nowak knelt beside him. Perhaps she used another, or it dried post-mortem. Poirot's mustache twitched. Possible, doctor, but improbable. The little gray cells, they suggest orchestration. He straightened, surveying the group. Who was last to see her alive? A chorus of denials followed. Victor claimed he had retired to the billiard room for a cigar. Irina to her chamber to freshen up. The Countess and Dr. Nowak had lingered in the drawing room over brandy. Yannick Lys had been overseeing the servants' clearing of the table. The Baroness had excused herself after coffee, citing a headache. The clock ticked ominously as they waited for the police. Poirot used the interval to observe his companions. Victor paced, his artist's hands clenching and unclenching, betraying nerves frayed by more than grief. Irina's eyes darted, suspiciously toward her husband, her lips pursed in unspoken accusation. Dr. Nowak adjusted his spectacles repeatedly, a tic that spoke of concealed thoughts. Countess Olga clutched a handkerchief, dabbing at dry eyes, her Russian stoicism cracking only in subtle tremors. Yannick Lys stood sentinel-like, his gaze fixed on the body with an intensity that bordered on personal loss. At last, the distant wail of a siren announced the arrival of Inspector Karl Wojcik, a burly man with a walrus mustache and the air of a bulldog roused from slumber. Accompanied by two uniformed officers, he burst into the study, his boots thudding on the carpet. "What madness is this?" he bellowed, taking in the scene. "Baroness Kowalski, dead, by God, in her own home?" Poirot introduced himself with a bow. "Hercule Poirot, at your service, Inspector. A guest, and now it seems a witness to tragedy." Wojcik's eyes narrowed. "The Belgian detective? Heard of you, but this is Polish soil, my jurisdiction." He barked orders to his men. Secure the room, photograph the body, dust for prints. Then, turning to the group, "All of you, to the salon. Statements will be taken." In the salon, under the stern gaze of the late Baron's portrait, the inspector began his interrogations. Poirot sat unobtrusively in a corner, his notebook open, jotting observations. First came Victor. "She was my aunt, my benefactor," he said, his voice unsteady. "We argued earlier, about money. My art doesn't pay, you see, and she threatened to cut me off. But murder? Absurd." Wojcik grunted. "Arguments lead to desperation. Where were you at midnight?" "In the billiard room, alone. I heard the scream and came running." Irina followed, her composure fracturing under the inspector's glare. "Elena despised me, thought me a gold digger. She even suggested I leave Victor, but I loved her estate, not her fortune." Her laugh was brittle. "I was in my room, changing. No one saw me." Dr. Nowak admitted to prescribing mild sedatives for the Baroness's insomnia. "Nothing lethal. She complained of nerves lately, shadows, she called them. Perhaps a premonition." "Or a motive," Wojcik snapped. "You had access to poisons?" "As any doctor does, but I was with the Countess." Countess Olga confirmed this, her accent thickening with emotion. "We spoke of old times, Russia before the revolution. Elena and I shared secrets from those days. A pact, you might say, but nothing sinister." Yannick Lys was last. "I served the family for 20 years, loyal to the end. I was in the servants' quarters when the cry came." Wojcik dismissed them, rubbing his chin. "Suicide, fits, the note, the locked room." But the door was ajar. "Non, Inspector," Poirot interjected softly. "Not locked, but perhaps meant to appear so. And the poison, cyanide in the chalice, from the decanter we all shared at dinner, yet only she suffered." The inspector waved a hand. "She could have added it herself later." Poirot shook his head. "Examine the decanter," It's in the dining room. Residue may tell. One of Wojciech's men fetched it, and under lamplight Poirot sniffed. Clean, so the poison was in the chalice alone, administered after the toast. Dawn crept through the curtains as forensics continued. Poirot wandered the study again, with Wojciech's grudging permission. He noted a faint scuff on the carpet near the desk, a shoe mark, perhaps feminine, too dainty for a man's. And on the blotter, beneath the spill, a partial imprint of a seal, like from a ring. "Interesting," he murmured. Back in the salon, tensions simmered. Victor confronted Irina. "You slipped away during dessert. Where to?" "To powder my nose. And you, sneaking off to the study earlier?" Dr. Nowak intervened. "Enough. Grief twists words." But Countess Olga whispered to Poirot. "Elena feared betrayal. She mentioned a caller last week, anonymous threats." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Threats of what, madame?" "Exposure. Our past. Forgeries during the war to survive. She held documents in her safe." Poirot glanced at the study safe, disguised behind a painting, untouched, or so it seemed. But a closer look revealed scratches on the lock. "Tampered with," he told Wojciech. The inspector sighed. "This complicates things. Motives everywhere." As the body was removed, shrouded in white, Poirot addressed the group. "The killer is clever, using the chalice, a symbol of trust from dinner. But clues remain. The dry pen, the arranged hand, the scuff mark. Someone here knows the truth." The estate awoke to a gray morning, servants whispering in corners. Poirot retired to his room briefly, his mind a whirlwind. "The method is personal," he thought. "Poison in a chalice. Biblical, almost, Judas's kiss." He recalled the toast, the Baroness last to drink, her chalice passed by Dr. Nowak, who added a lump of sugar. "For your nerves," he'd said. Downstairs, Wojciech shared preliminary findings. Cyanide confirmed. Time of death around midnight. No fingerprints on the chalice, but the Baroness's. The note's handwriting matched hers, but under duress? Poirot pondered alibis anew. Victor's solitude in the billiard room, unverified. Irina's absence, suspicious. Nowak and Olga together. But could one have slipped away? Lease in the quarters, but servants' stairs led directly to the study. A maid, Marta, approached timidly. "Sir, the Baroness? She had a visitor yesterday, a man in a dark coat. Argued they did." "Description?" "Tall, shadowed face, left angry." Poirot nodded. "Merci, mademoiselle." As rain pattered against the windows, the investigation deepened. Poirot examined the chalice under better light, engraved with the Kowalski crest, a family heirloom. Inside, a trace of undissolved powder. The sugar lump, he realized, vector for the poison. Confronting Nowak privately. "You added sugar, doctor. From where?" "My pocket. Habit for patience." "Show me." Nowak produced a small tin, empty now. "I used the last." Convenient, Poirot thought. The chapter of suspicions closed with a startling find. In the Baroness's clenched fist, overlooked initially, a button from a man's cuff embroidered with a Russian eagle. Countess Olga blanched when shown. "My late husband's," she whispered. "But how?" Poirot smiled enigmatically. The web tightens. Shadows reveal as much as they conceal. Chapter 3. Whispers from the Past. The morning after the Baroness's death dawned gray and oppressive, with a fine drizzle veiling the shadowed estate like a shroud. Hercule Poirot, having snatched only a few hours of fitful sleep in his guest chamber, descended the grand staircase with his customary precision, his walking stick tapping rhythmically on the marble steps. The house felt heavier now, its Gothic arches seeming to lean inward, as if burdened by the secrets they harbored. In the breakfast room, the guests assembled in uneasy silence, picking at plates of cold meats and pastries that the servants had laid out with mechanical efficiency. Inspector Karol Wojcik had posted a constable at the front door, and the study remained sealed with police tape, a modern intrusion amid the antique splendor. Poirot helped himself to a cup of strong black coffee, his sharp eyes noting the pallor on each face. Viktor Kowalski slouched in his chair, nursing a headache from the previous night's excesses, his fingers drumming an erratic tattoo on the tablecloth. Irina sat rigidly beside him, her breakfast untouched, her gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the rain-streaked window. Dr. Stefan Nowak stirred his tea methodically, his spectacles fogging slightly from the steam, while Countess Olga Petrova chain-smoked cigarettes in a long holder, the blue haze curling toward the chandelier. Janek Lis hovered at the periphery, directing the maid Marta with quiet commands, his expression as unreadable as a stone mask. Bon matin, mes amis, Poirot greeted them, taking a seat. Though the morning, it is anything but good. The tragedy weighs upon us all. Victor grunted. Understatement, monsieur. Aunt Elena dead, poisoned, and we're all suspects now, thanks to that bumbling inspector. Inspector Wojcik, entering at that moment with a sheaf of papers, overheard and bristled. Bumbling? I'll have you know, young man, I've solved cases that would make your artistic head spin. Now, Monsieur Poirot, a word, if you please. The autopsy, preliminary, cyanide, ingested approximately at midnight. No struggle marks, but the coroner notes the body was moved slightly post-mortem, perhaps to arrange the scene. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. As I suspected, the chalice was her own from the family collection, but the poison, where from? Cyanide is not a household item. Photographic chemicals, perhaps, Wojcik suggested, or from the doctor's bag. Nowak looked up sharply. My supplies are for healing, not harm. I keep no cyanide. Yet you have access to laboratories, Poirot interjected mildly. In Kraków, your clinic? Perhaps a source? Nowak adjusted his glasses. Irrelevant. I was here all evening. The inspector excused himself to interview the staff, leaving Poirot to his own devices. Seizing the opportunity, the detective turned his attention to the estate's underbelly, the kitchens and servants' quarters, where whispers often revealed more than formal statements. Descending a narrow back staircase, Poirot found Marta the maid, polishing silver in the scullery, her hands red from the work. She started at his approach, nearly dropping a tray. Mademoiselle Marta, Poirot said gently, his voice coaxing. You have served the Baroness long? 10 years, sir, she replied, her Polish accent thick. Since I was a girl, she was kind, strict, but kind. And her relations with the family? Confide in Poirot. The little details, they matter. Marta glanced over her shoulder, lowering her voice. The Baroness. She had secrets. From the war. I overheard her talking to the Countess about a Russian officer, a love affair in 1917, when Kraków was under occupation. They said there was a child, illegitimate, hidden away. Poirot's mustache quivered. A child? And who might this be? She never said, but the Countess, she wept when they spoke of it, said it was a burden on the soul. Intrigued, Poirot pressed further. And recently, any unusual visitors? A week ago, a man came. Foreign accent, Russian maybe. Argued with Madame in the study. I heard raised voices about debts from the past and the compact. He left in a fury. Description, if you please. Tall, bearded, wearing a greatcoat, limped a bit. Thanking her with a nod, Poirot ascended to the library, a vast room of towering shelves and ladders, where dust motes danced in the watery light filtering through leaded panes. He sought the family archives, pulling down leather-bound ledgers with gloved hands to avoid smudges. Flipping through yellowed pages, he traced the Kowalski lineage. Baron Tadeus's marriage to Elena in 1905, no children listed, but a notation of wartime disruptions. Then a curious entry from 1918, a donation to an orphanage in Lviv, substantial sum marked for the lost one. Ah, Poirot murmured. The whispers grow louder. His search led to a concealed panel behind a row of false books. A safe, its door slightly ajar. Inside, papers scattered, wills, deeds, and a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon. Poirot scanned them swiftly. Correspondence from the war years, addressed to Elena from a Captain Dmitri Ivanov. Passionate declarations, mentions of a precious secret born in secrecy. One letter alluded to forgery. The compact we forged in those dark days, papers to cross borders, artifacts smuggled, but the child, our child, must remain hidden. The safe had been rifled, some documents missing. Someone sought these, Poirot concluded, to silence the past. A sudden thunderclap shook the house, and the lights flickered as a storm gathered force. The guests were confined indoors, the roads to Kraków impassable with mud. Over luncheon in the dining hall, a somber affair of soup and bread, tensions erupted like the lightning outside. Victor slammed his fist on the table. "This waiting is intolerable. Aunt Elena cuts me from the will and now I'm accused?" Irina sneered. "You brought it on yourself with your gambling. She told me last week she'd leave everything to charity if you didn't reform." "And you encouraged her, no doubt," Victor shot back. "Jealous of her jewels, her status. Admit it. You hated her." Dr. Nowak cleared his throat. "Such accusations help no one. Elena consulted me about her will recently. She was conflicted." Countess Olga stubbed out her cigarette. "Conflicted? Because of the past. She and I, we survived the war by wits, forged passports, smuggled jewels. The Kraków Compact, we called it. A vow of silence. But lately, she spoke of revealing all." Yannick Lys, serving the meal, paused imperceptibly, his knuckles whitening on the tray. Poirot observed it all, sipping his wine. "The past, it is a shadow that lengthens. Madame la Comtesse, this compact, involved others?" Olga hesitated. "Dmitri, the officer, he vanished after the war. But rumors, he survived, destitute." "And the child?" Poirot probed gently. Her eyes widened. "How did you—" "Elena never acknowledged it publicly. A boy, given up. She feared scandal." The storm raged on, winds howling through the chimneys. Poirot requested a private word with Dr. Nowak in the conservatory, amid potted palms and the patter of rain on glass. "Docteur, your ledger. Show it to me." Nowak produced a small book from his pocket. "My prescriptions, see? Sedatives for Elena, nothing more." But Poirot's keen eye spotted anomalies, entries for cyanide compounds dated months ago, ostensibly for laboratory use. "You experiment, perhaps?" "For photography, developing solutions, harmless in small doses." "Yet missing vials," Poirot noted, "two unaccounted for." Nowak flushed. "A mistaken recording. I treated Elena for nerves. Perhaps I forgot." Upstairs, in the gallery, Poirot examined the family portraits. One of a young Elena, radiant, beside a stern Thaddeus, another faded of servants from 1918. Among them, a young woman resembling Marta, and a boy of 10 with Yannick Lies's features? No, too young. But the eyes? A crash from below drew him back. In the hall, a vase shattered, Victor and Irina arguing again. "You were with Nowak," Victor accused. "I saw you slip notes." Irina laughed bitterly. "Jealousy now? He treats my migraines, nothing more." As evening fell, the power failed, plunging the estate into candle-lit gloom. Poirot gathered clues in his mind. The wartime affair, the hidden child, the forged compact, missing documents, discrepant ledgers. Then another scream. From the gallery. Rushing up, they found a portrait vandalized, Elena's face slashed with a knife, the canvas hanging in tatters. "Who did this?" Wojciech demanded, arriving breathless. Accusations flew. Victor blamed Irina's temper. She pointed to Olga's nostalgia. Nowak suggested a servant's grudge. Lies remained silent. Poirot knelt, examining the cuts. Fresh, within the hour, and observe, the knife left fibers, wool from a sleeve. The group dispersed uneasily, candles flickering like uneasy spirits. "Alone with Wojciech," Poirot confided. "The vandalism, it is a distraction, but the past whispers truths. The child, perhaps among us?" Wojciech raised an eyebrow. "Lies? He came here as a youth, post-war." "Precisely," Poirot said. "The gray cells connect the dots." As the storm subsided, leaving a dripping silence, Poirot retired, his mind ablaze. The shadows of history were not mere ghosts. They were motives, coiled like serpents in the heart of the estate. Chapter 4. The alibi unravels. The storm had passed by midday, leaving the shadowed estate glistening under a weak sun, puddles mirroring the turrets like fragmented memories. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the night's disturbances, convened with Inspector Karol Wojciech in the sealed study, now a hive of forensic activity. Yellow tape cordoned off the desk, and a technician dusted surfaces for latent prints. The air still carried a faint chemical whiff from the spilled poison, mingling with the musty scent of old books. "Progress, Inspector?" Poirot inquired, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the room anew. Wojciech mopped his brow with a handkerchief. Fingerprints galore, mostly the Baroness's, a few smudges on the chalice that matched Dr. Nowak's from when he examined the body. The safe's contents are inventoried. Missing are several letters and a codicil to the will. Whoever rifled it knew what to take. Poirot's eyes narrowed at the safe, its door now propped open. And the button, the Russian eagle. It implicates the Countess, yet she claims it lost years ago. "A plant, perhaps," Wojciech conceded. "I've wired Kraków for background checks. Meanwhile, formal interrogations in the study, one by one. You'll observe." "Of course." "Avec plaisir," Poirot replied. "The alibis, they are like Swiss cheese, full of holes. We shall poke until they crumble." The suspects were summoned individually, the constable guarding the door to prevent eavesdropping. First entered Yannick Lies, the steward, his posture ramrod straight as he took the chair opposite Wojciech's makeshift desk. Poirot lounged in an armchair by the window, appearing casual but missing nothing. "Mr. Liss," Wojciech began, consulting his notes. "Your timetable last night, rounds at 11, then to the servants' quarters, but the maid Marta says you were absent for nearly half an hour around midnight." Lisa's jaw tightened. "A brief walk in the gardens. To clear my head. The storm hadn't started yet." Poirot leaned forward. "And this walk, it took you near the crypt? The old family vault, half buried in the woods?" Lisa's eyes flickered. Why would I go there? It's locked, overgrown. Yet boot prints lead that way, Poirot pressed. Matching your size, monsieur, and the crypt. Rumors of wartime treasures hidden there, smuggled artifacts from the compact. The steward shifted. I know nothing of that. My loyalty was to the Baroness, 20 years of service. Wojciech produced Lisa's timetable, a neatly typed sheet. This document, forged. The ink on the midnight entry smudges differently, as if added later. Lys exhaled sharply. All right, I altered it, but not for murder. I met someone. A village girl. Discreet affair. I didn't want scandal. Convenient. Wojciech snorted. No witness then? None I'd name. Dismissed, Lys departed with a glare. Next came Victor Kowalski, slumping into the chair like a deflated balloon, his eyes bloodshot. Nephew and heir, Wojciech stated. You argued with your aunt over debts. Witnesses heard raised voices in the afternoon. Victor ran a hand through his hair. Yes, she lectured me about responsibility, threatened to disinherit me. But I loved her. She raised me after my parents died. Poirot interjected. Your atelier, monsieur, the studio. Poirot visited it this morning. Sketches of the chalice, annotated with chemical symbols. Cyanide derivatives. Victor's face drained of color. Artistic fancy. I'm experimenting with pigments. Toxic ones, yes, for authenticity. But I didn't poison her. And your alibi, Wojciech demanded. Billiard room, alone. Playing solitaire billiards. The cue chalk on my hands proves it. Chalk washes off, Poirot noted. And the vandalism, the slashed portrait. Your knife from the studio matches the blade width. Victor buried his face in his hands. That was me. Drunken rage after the argument. I regretted it instantly. But murder? Never. As Victor left, Irina entered, her steps measured, chin held high. She sat gracefully, folding her hands in her lap. Madame Kowalski, Wojciech said. You slipped away during dessert. Where? To my room, for a headache powder. The evening was tense. Poirot produced a folded letter from his pocket, obtained from the safe's remnants. This, from the Baroness to you. Leave Victor, or he inherits nothing. Harsh words. Irina's eyes flashed. She meddled, thought me unworthy, a dancer from the streets. But I stayed for love, not money. And the auburn hair on the chalice, Wojciech pressed. Matches your dye. Planted. Anyone could have taken a strand from my brush. Poirot tilted his head. Your affair with Dr. Nowak, Victor suspects. Motive for silence? Irina laughed coldly. Migraine treatments, nothing more. Ask him. She departed haughtily. Dr. Nowak followed, adjusting his spectacles as he sat. Docteur, Wojciech began. Your ledger shows cyanide acquisitions, and you added sugar to her chalice at dinner. For her palate, she disliked bitter wine. The tin was harmless. Poirot held up the empty tin. But tests show cyanide traces in the residue. How explain? Nowak paled. Impossible. Someone tampered with it. And your alibi, with the Countess. But she dozed briefly, none? Time enough to slip to the study. I altered records once, Nowak admitted, sweating. Years ago, a treatment error. Elena covered it, but I'd never harm her. Countess Olga Petrova was last, her emerald gown rumpled, cigarette holder in hand. Madame, Wojciech said, the button in Elena's fist, your husband's. Lost weeks ago. Someone placed it there, to frame me. Poirot nodded. The compact, forgeries, smuggling. Elena held evidence against you? Olga sighed. We were partners in survival. But yes, she threatened to expose if I didn't repay a loan. Old debts. Your alibi. A telegram at midnight? Wojciech queried. Sent from the village post, time-stamped. Check it. As she left, Wojciech rubbed his temples. Alibis cracking, but no confession. Poirot paced. The scuff mark on the carpet, feminine shoe, Irina's size, but the hair, too obvious, a misdirection. Afternoon brought a development, a telegram for Wojciech. Backgrounds in Lis, born 1918, orphanage in Lviv, adopted by servants here, matches the lost one. Poirot's eyes lit. The child, Elena's secret son. Confronting Lis in the hall. Monsieur, your birth, Captain Ivanov's son? Lis stiffened. How? She told me last year, denied me recognition, but I served faithfully. Motive for revenge, Wojciech said. No, I grieved her secrecy, but loved her still. In Victor's atelier, Poirot found more. A hidden drawer with gambling IOUs, thousands owed. Victor confessed when pressed. Debts to shady lenders. Aunt refused to pay any more. Irina, overheard arguing with Nowak, admitted the affair. Comfort in loneliness, but harmless. Olga produced the telegram stub, verified. As dusk fell, Poirot assembled fragments, forged timetable, chemical sketches, tampered sugar, planted clues, wartime legacies. The alibis unravel like thread, he told Wojciech, but the pattern emerges. Not one killer. Perhaps complicity? A servant interrupted. Poison attempt on Poirot's tea last night, traced to kitchen arsenic. Who prepared it? Poirot demanded. Marta, on Lisa's orders. Lisa denied it. Lies. Chapter 5. The Gathering Storm. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of the shadowed estate, but inside, the atmosphere thickened like the air before a tempest. Hercule Poirot, having spent the morning poring over the unraveling alibis with Inspector Karol Wojciech, proposed a bold step to accelerate the investigation. We must recreate the fatal dinner, Inspector, he declared in the dining hall, where servants bustled to reset the table under Janek Lis's watchful eye. The psychology of the crime, it reveals itself in repetition. Positions, gestures, words, they will betray the guilty. Wojciech scratched his mustache doubtfully but acquiesced. Very well, Monsieur Poirot, if it flushes out the fox. The guests were summoned, their faces etched with varying degrees of reluctance and dread. Victor arrived first, disheveled and reeking faintly of turpentine from his studio. This is macabre, he muttered, taking his seat from the previous night. Irina followed, her movements fluid, but her eyes hardened with defiance. Dr. Stefan Nowak adjusted his chair meticulously, while Countess Olga Petrova lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. Janek Lis stood at the sideboard, decanting wine as if it were any ordinary evening. The Baroness's place remained empty, a silent accusation at the head of the table. Poirot positioned himself opposite, his notebook at the ready. We begin with the main course, he instructed. Recall the conversations, politics, art, inheritances. Servants brought in platters of mock quail, cold cuts substituted in haste, and the group mimed eating, the clink of cutlery echoing unnaturally. Pass the decanter, Poirot prompted, watching as it circled clockwise, from Victor to Irina, to Nowak, to Olga, then to the empty chair. And now the toast. Madame la Baronne proposed it, to new beginnings. Glasses were raised hesitantly. To new beginnings, they chorused flatly. Poirot's gaze fixed on Nowak. Docteur, you added the sugar lump to her chalice. Demonstrate. Nowak reached into his pocket, producing the tin, now refilled with innocuous sugar under police supervision. He dropped a lump into the absent Baroness's glass, where it fizzed slightly. As I did then, for her preference. Poirot halted the proceedings with a raised hand. "Observe, mes amis. The lump dissolves instantly, leaving no trace, perfect for concealing cyanide, and you alone handled her chalice in that moment. Nowak's composure cracked. Are you accusing me? I had no reason." "Reasons abound," Poirot countered mildly. "Your altered records, the botched treatment years ago. The Baroness covered for you, but perhaps she threatened exposure." "I swear it was routine," Nowak protested, his spectacles slipping down his nose. The reenactment dissolved into murmurs. Irina excused herself briefly, mirroring her dessert absence, while Victor fidgeted, his eyes darting to the door. Outside, in the corridor, Poirot conferred with Wojciech. "See how they shift? The storm gathers. Desperation brews." Venturing outdoors as the group dispersed, Poirot followed the boot prints noted earlier, leading through the sodden gardens to the family crypt, a moss-covered mausoleum half swallowed by ivy. The iron gate creaked open at his touch, unlocked. Inside, amid cobwebs and marble sarcophagi, he discovered disturbed earth near the Baron's tomb. Probing with his walking stick, he unearthed a small chest, locked but bearing fresh scratches. "Buried secrets," he murmured. Summoning a constable to guard it, he returned to the house, where Wojciech awaited with a locksmith. The chest yielded gold coins, jeweled icons, wartime spoils from the Kraków compact. "Smuggled artifacts," Wojciech whistled. "Worth a fortune. Who knew of this?" "Those? In the compact," Poirot replied. "The Baroness, Olga, perhaps others. A motive for theft and silence." Confronting Countess Olga in the conservatory, amid the humid scent of ferns, Poirot presented a coin from the hoard. "Recognize this, madame? Fabergé workmanship, Russian." Olga's face paled. "From the war. We hid them here to evade Bolsheviks. Elena guarded the key." "And you sought them? Your loan from her, unpaid." "I asked, yes, but she refused, said the past should stay buried." "Your telegram alibi, verified but sent from the village. Time enough to return and act?" Olga stubbed out her cigarette. "I was desperate, but not murderous." Twilight deepened as Poirot turned to Victor and Irina's quarters. In their shared suite, he found a hidden compartment in Irina's jewelry box, a vial of powder labeled as headache remedy, but testing as cyanide residue by Wojciech's kit. Irina, when accused, wept dramatically. "It's for rats in the attic. Victor brought it from his studio." Victor, overhearing, exploded. "Liar! You resented Aunt Elena's interference in our marriage." The argument escalated, revealing fissures. Victor's gambling debts to Russian lenders, perhaps linked to Olga's past. Irina's affair with Nowak, confirmed by a love note found in his pocket. Comfort in a cold marriage, Irina admitted tearfully. But Stefan, he provided the powders innocently. Nowak, summoned, confessed the liaison. A mistake. Elena discovered it, threatened to expose us both. Poirot's gray cells whirred. Adultery, debts, secrets, storms within storms. That evening, as candles were lit against the failing light, Poirot detected a bitter almond scent in his own teacup, set by his bedside. "Mon Dieu!" he exclaimed, pouring it out. Analysis confirmed cyanide, traceable to the kitchen supply, accessed by Lise. Confronting the steward in the pantry, "You ordered Marta to prepare my tea. An attempt on Poirot?" Lise's stoicism broke. "Not I. Someone tampered after." "But your birthright, the child of Elena and Ivanov, denied inheritance, serving as a menial." Lise sank onto a stool. "She confessed last month, promised to amend the will. But then, doubts. I overheard her with Olga, fearing scandal." Motive for impatience, Wojciech interjected, cuffing him temporarily. Yet Poirot demurred. Not so fast. The killer escalates. Targeting me means fear of exposure. Gathering all in the drawing room, fire crackling against the chill, Poirot paced. The gathering storm reveals much. Victor, your vandalism. Admitted. But the knife bore no blood, only paint. A diversion. Irina, the hair on the chalice. Your own, but planted by another. Nowak, the sugar tin. Tampered with your prints, but perhaps framed. Olga interjected. Then who? The one with access to all. Crypt, kitchen, secrets. Lise protested. I protected her. A telegram arrived for Wojciech. Background on the anonymous caller. A Russian émigré, Dmitri's brother, demanding reparations for the compact's spoils. Blackmail, Poirot noted, but he left days ago. As night enveloped the estate, another clue. In the slashed portrait's frame, a hidden note. The child inherits nothing. In Elena's hand, but ink analysis showed it post-dated. Forged, Poirot declared, like the suicide note. Suspicions swirled like eddies in the Vistula. Victor confessed pawning family heirlooms to cover debts. Irina admitted stealing a safe key, but finding it empty. Nowak revealed prescribing cyanide for Elena's experiments. Photography, he claimed. The storm peaked with a power surge, lights flickering. In the chaos, someone slipped away, caught by the constable. Olga, heading to the crypt. Retrieving what? Poirot demanded. A letter. Proof of my innocence, she sobbed. Elena forgave my debt. But the letter absolved her, time-stamped before death. Poirot confided to Wojciech. Innocence emerge, but the guilty thunder closer. Dawn approached, the estate hushed under mounting pressure. Clues interlocked, planted button, forged notes, buried treasures, illicit affairs. The killer, desperate, had erred, overlooking Poirot's unerring method. Chapter 6. The Revelation in the Salon. As the first flakes of snow began to drift past the mullioned windows of the shadowed estate, Hercule Poirot orchestrated the final act of his investigation with the precision of a maestro conducting a symphony. It was early evening, the house shrouded in a wintry hush, broken only by the occasional creak of settling timbers and the distant howl of wind sweeping down from the Carpathians. Inspector Karol Wojciech, his burly frame wedged into an armchair by the roaring fire in the grand salon, nodded his approval as the guests were herded in by a pair of constables. The room, with its high ceilings and walls paneled in dark oak, felt oppressively intimate under the circumstances, the flames casting flickering shadows that danced like accusing specters across the assembled faces. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot announced, positioning himself at the center of the Persian rug, his small stature commanding the space nonetheless. The time has come to dispel the shadows that have engulfed this estate. The murder of Baroness Elena Kowalski was no impulsive act, no mere suicide contrived in despair. Non. It was a meticulously woven tapestry of deception, exploiting the threads of trust, history, and hidden grievances. Gather close, for Hercule Poirot shall unravel it before you. The group settled uneasily into the circle of chairs arranged around him. Victor Kowalski slouched forward, his artist's eyes hollow with exhaustion, fingers interlaced tightly. Beside him, Irina maintained a ballerina's poise, though her knuckles whitened on the armrests. Dr. Stefan Nowak polished his spectacles absently, a gesture that had become a telltale sign of his unease. Countess Olga Petrova, her emerald jewelry dulled in the firelight, exhaled a plume of cigarette smoke. Her Russian features, set in a mask of resigned anticipation. Yannick Lys stood apart near the door, his steward's uniform impeccable, but his gaze fixed on Poirot with a mixture of defiance and dread. Poirot paced slowly, his patent leather shoes silent on the carpet, building the tension like a storyteller drawing out a tale. We begin with the method, the poisoned chalice. Cyanide, swift and merciless, concealed in the sugar lump added during the dinner toast. It dissolved tracelessly, ensuring only the Baroness suffered. But who possessed the opportunity? All eyes turned to you, Dr. Nowak, for it was your hand that dropped the lump into her glass. Nowak started, his face flushing. I did, but it was habit. She always requested it for the wine's bitterness. The tin was in my pocket. Anyone could have tampered with it. Poirot raised a placating hand. Précisément, docteur. You provided the means unwittingly. Your prints on the tin confirm handling, but the cyanide traces were added later by one who knew your routine. Your hands, they are clean of murderous intent, though not of other sins. The affair with Madame Irina, the altered medical records from years past. The Baroness held these over you, yet you lacked the nerve for such a bold stroke. Nowak sagged in relief, though Irina shot him a venomous glance, her secret exposed. Turning to Victor, Poirot's cat-like eyes gleamed. Monsieur Kowalski, the nephew burdened by debts, your gambling losses mounted like snowdrifts, and the Baroness's threats to disinherit you provided ample motive. The sketches in your atelier, chalices annotated with chemical notes, suggested experimentation with poisons. And the vandalized portrait? Your knife, your rage. Victor leaned forward, protesting. The portrait, yes, in a fit after our argument, but the sketches were for art, pigments inspired by alchemy. I begged her for funds, but kill her? She was my only family. Poirot nodded sagely. Indeed, the sketches prove coincidence, not culpability. Your alibi in the billiard room holds, chalk residue on the cue undisturbed. Debts drove desperation, but not to murder. You sought loans from shadowy Russians, linked perhaps to the compact, but stopped short of patricide. Victor's shoulders slumped, a mix of vindication and shame washing over him. Irina straightened as Poirot pivoted toward her. Madame, the former ballerina, graceful yet sharp as a stiletto. Jealousy burned within you, the Baroness's jewels, her hold over your marriage, the letter threatening disinheritance if you did not leave Victor, and the auburn hair on the chalice matching your dyed locks. Her laugh was sharp, brittle. Planted evidence. I despised her meddling, yes. Slipped away during dessert to compose myself. But poison? Absurd. And the affair with Stefan? It was escape, not conspiracy. Exactement, Poirot agreed. The hair was too obvious, a clumsy frame. Your shoe size matches the scuff mark near the desk, but that too was misdirection. Someone wearing your slippers, perhaps. Jealousy simmered, but your hands directed no fatal blow. Irina's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed suspiciously at the others. Poirot's gaze shifted to Countess Olga. Ah, Madame la Comtesse, the émigré with echoes of imperial Russia. The Kraków compact, forgeries and smuggling during the war, shared with Elena. You feared exposure, the loss of your precarious status, the unpaid loan, the hidden treasures in the crypt, and the button in her fist, your late husband's with the eagle emblem. Olga stubbed out her cigarette, her voice steady. The button was stolen from my room, planted to implicate me. The compact bound us in survival. I would not betray her. My telegram from the village proves I was absent at midnight." Poirot smiled enigmatically. "Oui, the telegram is genuine, sent and received. Your absence clears you of the act, though not of intent. Desperation for the crypt's artifacts motivated theft. Perhaps, but the murder? Non. You retrieved a forgiving letter from the hoard, proof of Elena's mercy." Olga exhaled slowly, the weight lifting from her features. The room grew taut as Poirot's eyes finally settled on Yannick Lys. "And you, Monsieur le Steward, the loyal servant of 20 years, or should Poirot say, the unacknowledged son? Born of Elena's wartime affair with Captain Dmitri Ivanov, hidden in an orphanage, then brought here under guise of charity, denied inheritance, serving in the shadows of your birthright." Lys's impassive mask shattered, his broad shoulders tensing. "Lies. I served faithfully." "No, it is truth," Poirot interrupted gently but firmly. "The ledgers confirm the donation to Lviv orphanage in 1918. Your features echo Ivanov's portraits. Elena confessed to you recently, promised amendment to the will, but wavered, fearing scandal. You overheard her doubts with Olga. Motive crystallized. Revenge for denial. Claim to the estate and crypt's treasures." The group murmured, eyes turning to Lys. "The footprint in the study, your boot, poorly effaced," Poirot continued, pacing faster. "The forged suicide note, written post-mortem, but the pen lay dry across the room. You forgot to ink it properly in your haste. The tampered sugar tin, accessed during your rounds, using vials from Nowak's bag, which you handled as steward. The planted clues, Irina's hair from her brush, Olga's button from her jewelry. The attempt on Poirot's tea, arsenic from the kitchen, ordered under your authority, and the crypt, unlocked by you, the earth disturbed as you sought the hoard to fund your new life." Lys lunged forward, snarling, "Proof? Mere conjecture." Inspector Wojcik rose swiftly, restraining him with iron grip, constables aiding. "Enough to arrest," Wojcik growled. Poirot held up a hand. "The final thread, the anonymous caller, a ruse, your voice disguised, to sow fear. But the maid Marta heard the limp. Your old war injury, feigned in youth but real now. And the note in the portrait frame, forged in Elena's hand, but the ink fresh, unmatched to her pen." Lys deflated, confessions tumbling forth in a torrent. She promised recognition, then retracted. "I couldn't bear another year in servitude. The compact's secrets, I knew from eavesdropping. The poison was easy, Nowak's supplies. I arranged the scene, but you, your infernal cells." Justice descended swiftly. Wojcik led Lys away in cuffs, the estate sighing in relief. The others dispersed, Victor and Irina reconciling tentatively, Nowak facing professional inquiry, Olga reclaiming her artifacts legally. As dawn painted the snowy landscape in pale gold, Poirot boarded his carriage for the station, the Orient Express awaiting. "Au revoir, Kraków," he murmured, twirling his mustache. "The little gray cells, they triumph once more. Order and method prevail over chaos." The manor receded, its shadows banished by the light of truth.